And this again is like the wood element. They really love what they love about themselves, because they're wood element. And so they've got that ferocity. Here's the virtues: strength and accomplishment. Like we said, if you want to get something done, call a wood element. Honest and truthful. Solid and dependable. Kind. I mean, all of those things, right? If you're that person, you love being dependable. You love being the one that somebody calls on. Welcome to the world of energy, where science meets spirit. Ancient wisdom merges with cutting-edge knowledge, and the possibilities for a healthier, happier you are endless. It's Lauren here on another episode of Energy Works, and I'm here with Blaine, who is also a secondary wood element. Hi, Blaine.
Hi, I love how you started that.
Well,
I win, more wood.
I started that because we were deciding who's going to start the episode, and Blaine said, you're more wood, so you start. And that's so wood elementy to be like, I'm going to do it. No, I'm going to do it. You do it. That's so wood element. So we're going to talk all about the wood element today. And this one we know a lot about because I'm a primary wood and Blaine's a secondary wood. And so we got a lot of wood element going between us, which kind of makes sense. We run a big global company and it takes a lot of doing to do that. And the wood element of all the elements is the most doing. They are gonna, if you need something done, you want to call a wood element because they are gonna get it done. So let's start out. I shared last time about the physical parts of the water element. So I'll start here with the physical elements of the wood. And just remember, this is high level umbrella. If you really want to learn every little nuance of all of these, first of all, there's tons of really incredible books of 5-element theory. I also wrote a book based on 5-element theory. I'm not sure I would include it in the best 5-element books in the world. I'd have to think about that. But being a wood element, I'm going to say it's really good. And if you want to learn some more about 5-element theory through the lens of energy medicine yoga, you can grab a copy of my book, The Energy Medicine Yoga Prescription. And it literally breaks down 5-element theory in great detail so that you can understand a lot more than we can really share with you just on a podcast. But so the physical part of the wood element is muscles, tendons, ligaments, and nails. Muscles, tendons, ligaments, and nails. And so before we get into all of the other things and the archetypes and the virtues and the faults and all of that, I want to pause for a moment here to share when we were talking about the overall 5-element theory and why it's so valuable. We said something that it's the lens through which you can get sick and also the lens through which you can heal. So as a primary wood element, if I am going to get an injury, it is going to be muscles, tendons, ligaments. That is just how I roll. I'm unlikely in the same accident to break a bone, even though I'm secondary water, because my wood is so primary that if I get into that same accident, I'm going to tear a muscle or a tendon or a ligament. And as a matter of fact, most of the physical ailments that I struggle with are muscles, tendons, ligaments. In fact, right now, I'm working on my Achilles tendons. These are main tendons in the body. If you don't know anything else about tendons, you know that you've got Achilles tendons because that's one of the ones that is named like that. And that's something that I have been working with. I like to say that instead of suffering from or struggling with, I'm working with because it's a learning and I'm actually learning a lot about the Achilles tendons. But that's just an example of how physically we interpret the elements kind of for ourselves. And before I go deeper into wood, I'm just curious, Blaine, do you have a similar thing like that? Have you noticed getting ill or getting well through your element, primary or secondary?
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you right now, as a secondary wood, I have iliotibial band syndrome in my left leg, the IT band, which falls into that. But my primary is metal, which is lungs, is one of the things with metal. And I have had, I mean, we'll talk about it more in metal because feel like I'm a little bit of just kind of a textbook case with lungs and large intestine too, with metal. But yes, I got sick and I balanced my metal and healed myself and finally transcended decades and decades of lung problems through balancing my element. I have broken a bone, but I think it's a good time to, I've broken 2 bones, actually. I've broken my ankle and I've broken my collarbone, but my collarbone never healed. And so it's kind of an ongoing thing with this broken collarbone. But I think it's a nice time to make a point that when we're talking about an element being out of balance, we don't always mean that there's too much. An element can be out of balance because there is too little. And when it comes to the water element, which is where the bones are, if you listen to the last episode, my water, I am dried up sometimes. I mean, I am just my water element when I'm looking at my balance of my elements, which we know they're not going to be 20, 20, 20, 20, where, I have more emphasis in some, less emphasis in others. My water is probably the one where I have the most, we call it deficiency. I mean, that's a term we would use in Chinese medicine. I am deficient water. And so I think that I've broken bones through my deficient water. So, not that I'm water primary and so I break bones, but I think I'm incredibly water deficient. And so I break bones, looking at it through that lens.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's really important to talk about, that you can have too much and you can also have too little. And either way, you are not in balance. And I'm really excited for when we get to the metal element to talk about your healing there. But I also want to tag on to that. So what Blaine was talking about are the 2 physiological systems that go with the metal element. So let me come back to that with the wood element. Let's stay in wood for a moment here. So when I gave you muscles, tendons, and ligaments, those are the kind of the areas of the body that element governs. So wood element governs muscles, tendons, ligaments. And the 2 physiological processes in the wood element are the liver and the gallbladder. So the liver and the gallbladder. So if you have any issues with liver and gallbladder, that is also a wood element issue. And that kind of comes, strangely enough, a little bit lower under the umbrella, or not lower, but just under the umbrella. Whereas the physical parts that wood governs is that muscle, tendon, ligaments, and nails. But so wood is the element of spring. Spring is renewal. Liver is the only part of the body that can renew itself. And I don't know the percentages, but you can lose like a really lot of your liver and your liver will regenerate itself. And when we're very young, we can regenerate the tips of our fingers. You can actually grow back a tip of your finger. I forget to what age that is. But there's a lot of creatures, salamanders. There's several creatures that you can cut off a whole limb, they'll grow back the limb. Like there's crazy regenerative capabilities of a lot of living creatures on the earth. For us, tips of the fingers when you're kids and your liver. So, and liver is the organ, I guess I would say, of springtime. And springtime is it's a renewal, it's regeneration. We've come through the winter. We've made it through that long, dark internal period when there's no fresh food, there's no, clear ground. And I'm talking from the Northern Hemisphere and, in a platonic winter, let's just say, or a typical winter right there, where the ground is covered. So you don't see the ground and there's no fresh food and all of that. And you've survived all of that. And you've come through, and now this is the time of renewal, of bursting forth. of I'm here, I'm alive. There's that, you've seen the crocuses bursting up through the snow, and you've seen, in flowers crack open the concrete to come up and bloom. Or in the high country here, 10,000 feet, or, Blaine, you live where there's even bigger mountains, 14,000 feet. And you can go up and there'll be the littlest, most beautiful, perfect flower. That is the wood element. It is like, I'm going to be here no matter how hard it is, no matter how high up it is in the, how little air, oxygen, or whatever. I am being born. That is the power of the wood element. And so let's see. Okay. Here we go. The archetypes for the. So go ahead, Blaine.
Oh, no, go ahead. I'm fine.
Okay. Okay. The archetypes of the wood element: the warrior, the pioneer, and the commander. Right. So the wood element is all about leadership and doing the right thing, knowing what the right thing is. And that the fact of the emotional piece being anger when you're out of balance, this is not to say that anger is a bad thing at all. I want to just make that very clear. There are no such thing as bad emotions. There are no bad emotions. There are no bad parts. There is nothing bad about any part of you. Just know that, okay? Put a big pin in that one. And emotions are giving us information. And so the information that we get from the emotion of anger is that something isn't right. There is an injustice, whether it's to you or to somebody else or to the world. Something isn't right. And you feel this energy flood your body with different, people feel anger in different ways. You can feel it physiologically, like this thrumming or this rising up or this heat, and this desire to then act out in some way. Now, if you're not well skilled, if you don't have a high emotional intelligence quotient, if you don't know how to work with your emotions, and you are kind of at the whim of your emotions, when anger comes up, you may act out. Many people do. That is kind of the hallmark of anger, is that people act out in violent ways, generally, because anger is quite often a violent emotion, because it is showing you some part that has been violated. And when we are violated, we respond with violence. And this is incredibly destabilizing to the system and incredibly powerful, because it is giving you information about what is okay, what is right and what is wrong, and what that you may need to do something. You may need to take a strong action to change this circumstance. And that is really the hallmark of wood, that warrior energy. I mean, that is exactly the textbook of warrior. And I like to think of it not as, how do I say this? I don't mean warrior from the sense of people who are going to war. There are times when it is appropriate to go to war. Most times in history, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it has not been appropriate to go to war. And there have been a lot of wars that have been fought over just, I mean, I don't mean to like minimize the whole world, but like some really stupid reasons. I'm just going to say it there. You can come after me if you want to. If you're a wood element and that triggers you, you might want to come after me. But, there's a lot of wars that are fought just, for religious purposes or to gain territory or things like it. Really, we're going to kill somebody else for that? But I mean the warrior of the heart. Dane Perry's, if any of you know Dane Perry's work, the warrior of the heart, the warrior archetype of standing up for what is right. The pioneer, that's kind of, breaking into new territory. Takes an amazing amount of power to do that. It's not easy to do that. That's that wood element. You can think of, and I often do think of the wood element as like your spine. It's like, what do you stand for? And what will you not stand for? Okay, here's some essential themes growth and expansion. Eager to try what hasn't been tried. That's like the pioneer, right? You want to go where no one has been before. I remember when I first came out to Colorado when I was about 16, and I was maybe just about to go on a Knowles trip, and I was with my aunt, and she took me and my cousin Che, and we went hiking somewhere, and we went off the trail, and we just walked wherever we wanted. Now, there's a term for that. It's called bushwhacking. I didn't know that term because I'm from a medium-sized town in Massachusetts, and I wasn't hiking, and I certainly wasn't bushwhacking. And here it was, the opportunity to go wherever you wanted, and the possibility that no one had ever been there before. If you're on a trail, you know people are always walking that trail. But if you're going off the trail, you might be going to a place where no one has ever been. That's that pioneer spirit. Okay, some more themes. A fierce individualism. So if you had to say that a country had an element, I would say that the United States would be a wood element. I mean, I would pretty much say that we would be a wood. Would you agree with that, Blaine? I almost called you Donna.
Wow, I don't think anyone's ever called me Donna. I'm trying to think through if I do agree with that. I mean, is colonialism wood?
Yeah, it's the pioneer
Yeah,
and
I
the
guess.
warrior. Like we
Yeah.
came here, we're like, this looks new, and let's just take it. That's wood element, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, yes.
Yeah. Mwah, mwah. There's that water. Kind of sad, a little depressing. There's our history. Okay, let's keep going on with wood because there's some good stuff about wood too.
Well, and I think in today's world, there are people or would saying colonialism was not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to do things today to make right the wrongs of the past, right? And so that is also wood.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that around. Absolutely right. That is absolutely wood. And that's a balanced wood to acknowledge the wrongs that maybe you didn't even have a hand in doing, but acknowledge the historical wrongs that you are aware of and perhaps a party to. And to say, this needs to change. This is not okay. This is not acceptable. We need to do something different, and to stand up and to take a stand for that. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. And there we go. Fierce individualism with a cause and a truth. That is very wood elementy. Okay. I'm going to go right to faults here because that fierce individualism with a cause and a truth can also be twisted, as we know, as we see all over the place, where somebody will say something over and over and over again, and then it becomes believed to be the truth, even if it isn't the truth. Or somebody leads a charge towards something that they believe is good, but may not be good for the whole. So here's the fault of the wood element: a lack of sensitivity to others. A lack of sensitivity to others. Okay, this is like bringing the United States right into clear focus here. We are definitely a wood element country. Lack of sensitivity to others. Here's it. One vision. My vision is the right vision. I mean, if that doesn't sum up some of the rhetoric that we have been hearing over the past months and years, I just don't know what is. The inability to see that there is a wider collective that have other histories, other stories, other desires and needs, other beliefs than you, and that your way or the highway doesn't really fly. But the fault of a wood is they barrel ahead with tunnel vision. They're just like, we're doing it anyway. And especially if you get a wood element in power, that can be really dangerous. And if you have a wood water element in power, so you think about the water out of balance, or even partly the entitled one, the baby, the king, the entitled one, I'm not saying any names here, who has a lack of sensitivity to others, tunnel vision, and barreling ahead. That is not a good recipe. That's not a good recipe. Okay, I'm not saying any names. Here's a fault here, honest to a fault. Okay, so you can think about that where it's funny because this is also a Sagittarian fault, is that bluntness, and that honest to a fault. It's like not listening to the four truths. Like, is it necessary? Is it true? Is it necessary? Three, is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Right? Like, I could say to you, wow, Blaine, that color looks horrible on you. It just makes your skin look all ruddy, and I don't know, you just look really bad in that. Anyway, just thought I'd let you know. Really? Who needs to hear that, right? And is it honest, or is it just my point of view, or right? So, I mean, that was just a little bit of a joke, but I just kind of wanted to give you that, like, what that honest to a fault kind of means. Okay, so that's the faults. And maybe some of us have hurt ourselves in that lack of sensitivity to others. I've absolutely had that in my life. So you might see yourself in some of these, my fellow and fellow-s wood elements. Here's our virtues, though. And this, again, is like the wood element. They really love what they love about themselves, because they're wood element. And so they've got that ferocity. Here's the virtues: strength and accomplishment. Like we said, if you want to get something done, call a wood element. Honest and truthful. Solid and dependable. Kind. I mean, all of those things, right? If you're that person, you love being dependable. You love being the one that somebody calls on. I have a friend that he is, if you get into any kind of trouble, he is your first call and he lives for it. He just loves he'll show up and haul you out of a ditch. He'll, like, anything, something goes wrong in your house, he can fix anything and build anything and make anything. And he will come over in the middle of the night in a freezing cold storm because you don't have water or your electricity went out and you can't call anybody. He's the guy. That's a strong wood element. And you know who you are if you're like that. You love to be the helper. Here we go. This is a piece that I really love because I see myself in this. Can lead and inspire others for a cause. That's the warrior of the heart, right? That's the one that's leading the charge for truth and righteousness and goodness and, all of those things, that being really inspirational. Okay. I was going to tell a story. I'm going to take a pause for a moment there and let you chime in.
Yeah. My partner Burke is a wood, and he is like that. He's like the guy who, is happy if you call, happy to help. We actually, last night, this is what we did. I'm at the Florida place right now, and on Christmas Day, we went to a friend's house, and she's a single woman, and she hosted Christmas for, I think we had about 8 people over there, 8 adults. And so Burke was back in her kitchen helping her, get the dishes clean and stuff like that afterwards. And her faucet was stuck like right in the middle. You couldn't turn the faucet. And she has one of those double sinks. And so it was stuck in like the worst place, like the hill between the 2 sinks. And so, there's just like this 2 inches of space where you like put a dish in. And she was like, oh, I had a workman, because Burke's like, what is happening? Like, what is wrong with your sink? And she's like, oh, I had someone come and fix it. And I guess there was something else wrong. And he said that it was stuck, but that it, would be okay. And she's like, I didn't check his work and he left. And that's where he left it stuck. Like, that was his spot. So Burke and I, it was like the next day after Christmas, and Burke's like, I can't handle her sink like that. Like, we have to go fix it. So her name's Fiona, and so we I sent her a text, and Burke was driving, and I was like, Burke really kind of can't handle your sink like that. Like, is there a day that we can come over, and, and I was like, and he went and like picked her up another faucet in case anyway, like that's wood, right? That like helps somebody else out, see a problem, get it fixed. I mean, it's nice to have some balanced wood in your life.
That is awesome. That is the archetype of wood element. He saw an issue. Nobody asked him. He's just like, I need to fix this. He can't live with himself with it not being fixed. Like, it wasn't his problem, but he's like, I have to fix this. He went and bought the other faucet. And so did he fix it?
Yeah, yeah, that's what we did last night. That's where I started, was last night. We went over there, and, he ended up not needing the other faucet, so he returned it this morning, and he fixed our old one, and now it's fixed.
That's awesome. I love that. I can just visualize him like, I can't live with her faucet like that. Like, like it has nothing to do with
Yes.
him, but there it is. There's a problem in the world. He needs to right the problem. That's just awesome. I love that. I love that. Um, I was going to tell a little story too. So we talk about, that the out of balance emotion for wood is anger. And I have a lot of anger in me, and I didn't really understand. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why. And if you've read any of my books, you sort of know my trauma story. And so, trauma can lead to all kinds of out of balance emotions. And for me, for years, it was anger. And once I learned five element theory, it's like, okay, well, at least now I know why. So now I know like the double reason. It's the trauma, but I'm also a wood element. And so anger is my like emotion for any little thing that happens in the world. My first go to is anger. Anything, some little thing I'm scrolling about some celebrity has nothing to do with me, and I get angry on their behalf or something. And um, it's up for me all the time, and I've really learned to work with it and to understand it and to listen to it, and but also, it's a very it's a physical feeling, this of anger. I mean, all of the emotions are. So I want to say that, but and maybe this is just for me. So we can talk this through when we get to all of them. But that if it's not dispersed, it can really cause all kinds of problems. And we know, you know, um, violence that perpetuates, and if you've come from a violent home, chances are that you will continue that violence forward, because it is such a powerful uh, sensing feeling that we have in the body, and it's uncomfortable, and we want to dissipate that. It's like, we talk about, we're back to the water metaphor. Water always is seeking its lowest point, right? If you let some water go anywhere, it will find the low point, right? And that's how it dissipates its energy. Well, with the energy of anger, it needs to dissipate, but it sort of needs to come up and out, as opposed to kind of sinking down and finding its level that way. And so, there's a lot of therapies of, beating pillows or smashing glasses, or, ways to get your anger out that is not violent and that is not hurtful to anybody else. Because, of course, the antidote for anger is assertive action, but not violent action. It's assertive action. It's Burke going to fix the sink. It's not Burke taking a hammer and banging on the sink because he's so mad that it doesn't work, right? It's doing an action that's appropriate to meeting what's happening, and trying to transform it into its more balanced place. And so for me, I've had a lot of anger, and I don't know what to do with it, and I don't want to just sit with it. And so I often have done this, and it's kind of funny. I haven't done it in quite some time, but I live in a small town and in the West, and we're plagued by all the Western small town issues that all other small towns in the West are plagued with. We have lack of affordable housing. We have big, stupid money moving in and doing big, stupid things with their money. We have overdevelopment, all of these kind of things. And one of the reasons I moved to this town is because I like how little and sweet and kind of in the middle of nowhere it is. And it used to be there was nothing here. Like you couldn't even get a good meal, and I loved that. But that's not the case anymore. But there's a lot of development and overdevelopment, and it makes me really angry for so many reasons. Just development in the world, and it's not addressing any affordable housing issues. It's just making the rich richer, and it's building techniques as a 30% waste, and it's global warming. Like it's all of the things, and it's ugly. Like nobody builds beautiful things. They build ugly, quick, fast things, and they sell them for expensive, and then more people move in here, and it gets a vicious cycle. So I would go to city council meetings, and I would stand up, and I would about these, developments that I was so angry about and so opposed to. And I felt like I had all the right things on my side. Like I was angry about them for all the right reasons. And I was doing something that was a way to express my anger in a meaningful, powerful way that wasn't hurting anybody. And it was a way for me to get out my anger and be productive with it, with right action. And so I would go to these city council meetings and I would get up and I would speak. Well, now you've listened to me on the podcast for a while, and maybe some of you have studied with me. And this isn't tooting my own horn, this is knowing who I am. I can be a really passionate speaker, and I can get people on my side. And here it is right here. I can lead and inspire others for a cause. And so I would go to these city council meetings and I would passionately speak. Now, there's rules. We follow Robert's rules at city council meetings. There's rules. And one of the rules is there's no clapping. Every time I got up to speak, the entire room would burst into cheers. And there'd be like standing room and down the hallway, and everyone would be cheering because I was passionate and I was speaking for a cause and I was inspirational. And I would be able to transform my anger and feel that I had done appropriate action. Did I change things? There were some developments that we managed to stop. I don't think it was me or just me. I was a voice in the chorus. But for me, I was my voice in the chorus, and I was following my truth and expressing my anger in a balanced, positive, inspiring way that both inspired and helped me and my community. And so that was a little thing that I would, sort of a game isn't the right thing to do because we're talking about, really big issues here, but it was a way that I allowed my wood element to express itself in a constructive way, but I was still able to tap into this anger and dissipate this anger so that it didn't eat me up, which that's another metaphor that we use with the wood element, is like being eaten up inside by your anger. And I didn't hurt anybody with my anger. I didn't, go to this construction site and pour sugar into the gas tank or anything like that, right? So I did right action and was able to express and transform my anger. And I would feel really calm after these events. I would feel calm and at ease, like I had done all that I could do. And that's all you can do.
Yeah, that's, I hadn't heard you say that before, Lauren, but I can 100% visualize that. that scene with you and the city council and you being very inspirational for people. When I started learning 5 elements from you and was learning them in this way that Donna taught you and you taught me, and then we've all gone and explored with other books and teachers and stuff too. I had never this out of balance emotion with balancing emotion. I had never really looked at the world quite like that before. And I am wood secondary, and so I do resonate with a lot of those things. And I'm an animal activist, and I think that's, the get her done energy and the activism. I think most people who are activists probably are wood, at least secondary, if not primary. That I am in animal activism groups in Boulder, Colorado, and like everybody who's active in those groups is wood. It's just like the group of wood people. But what I learned from looking at the world through the lens of the 5 elements is this anger being, diffused or flipped or constructively put via right action, right? And because I think there's just this tendency, like holding on to anger, just not giving it a funnel, not giving it the pressure release valve in any way, because people don't know, haven't been taught, or no one's modeled for them. That's why violence perpetuates in the way that it does, because they weren't modeled any other way to have a release valve for these emotions that are piling up. It's the only way they know how to do it. We have this with Burke, because when he's a handyman around the house, and we have a lot of projects going, and he's always building something. And when it's not going well, it is like the flurry of profanity, which he's not a guy who uses a lot of profanity and F word, and all this stuff. I never hear it out of him. And he gets so mad at himself because his father also was Mr. Handyman and always working on everything. And that's what his father would do. And he gets mad because he can feel himself being his father. He can and then he'll apologize to me, or he'll be like, Blaine, I did the whole project with no cuss words, because he's never had any modeling for him when he's in that really intense situation where it's not going the way he wants, and and all of that. It's his only release valve. It's the only way he's ever been taught. So we've been working on other ways to dissipate that energy. And so putting it in this constructive, kind of assertive, right action sort of thing, like, this thing makes me angry. What is the right action I can take to dissipate this energy? It's, I think, maybe the most constructive thing I've learned about the 5 elements.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. It's huge. It's really huge. And, it's so interesting that you talked about that with Burke, because one of the things that's so potent about anger is primarily for women. Women have not been allowed, I'm using air quotes if you can't see me, not been allowed to feel anger. Like, that's not an appropriate emotion for a woman to feel. And so coming into, and yet, of course, we feel anger just as much as anybody else, right? And maybe even more, right? We have a lot of reasons to be angry. We've been, second-class citizens. We still are. Just all of the people trying to control our bodies, just everything, that all of these, the violence perpetrated on women. There's a lot of reasons to be angry, and at the same time, you're not allowed to be angry about any of those things. And what happens if you don't express these things is, well, there's this, the saying, what is repressed will express. It will express in some capacity, but think of this. If you don't express the wood element and you press it back down, it's going to go back into the water element. So if you don't express the anger, it goes back into the water and becomes depression. And who are the primary people that are depressed? Women have far more levels of depression than men. Wood is about speaking up. Women have been told to be quiet. All of these things that if we don't express them, they force themselves down and backwards, like that's going backwards. And then, and if we don't express it appropriately, it goes forwards into the next element in a kind of a twisted way as well. And we'll talk about that when we get to the next element, which is fire. But we can look backwards because we've already talked about water. If you don't overcome your fear, you can go right into anger. And if you look at the anger in the world right now, if you actually strip it away, what is it? It's actually fear. It's most of the anger that we see in the world is fear. The aggression is based on fear. Someone is going to do better than me, go further than me, have more than me. I'm afraid of being replaced. I'm afraid of being made redundant, all of those things. And that fear, instead of having courage to do something that's more intrinsic to you and whole and healing, you go into the anger and you don't have a way to express that. And then we have the violence that we see today. People are afraid and they don't have an outlet. They don't understand how to become courageous, and then they become angry. And then we'll talk about what happens after that in the fire element. But so that learning how to express that anger and, at least swearing a bunch, that's better than taking the hammer and like banging through the wall because he's so frustrated, right? Or like, some other kind of violence that he could do. So that's an actual benign way of getting that energy out of the body. Could he find a more productive way? You said you're working on it, and maybe he can. Yeah, it's powerful. The wood element is connected to, oh my gosh, I'm going to add some complication here, but I'm going to do it. It'll all come out. For all the years that we're going to do this podcast, you will all understand everything there is about energy. But the wood element is connected to the throat chakra, which is about communication, the ability to communicate your truth, your peace, why you are here. There's a specific reason that you're here, nobody else. You and the gifts that you have to give to the world are yours, nobody else's. And so if you give them, when you give them, that is part of you. Here's another metaphor. Remember that game where the little wheels and the little triangles, Trivial Pursuits, and you would ask questions? It was like in all of the different areas, and you would fill in a little triangle when you got the questions right in that particular area. And it was like each area of your life. So when you satisfy, right, the mission of each area of your life, this is why it's so important to understand each of the 5 elements, because there is a gift in each of them. And the gift of the wood element is knowing your place in the world. And I don't mean you stay in your place. I mean, you have a place that is yours, that is only for you. It is like every tree has a place in the forest. And what are the gifts that you are going to bring forth once you claim your rightful place on this earth? That is, I think, one of the hugest gifts of the wood element.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. Do you want to do the sound and the neurovascular hold? The sound is what Burke has the option to use.
I love that. Okay, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to say one last thing here about when we're fully in balance here is a wood element. Visionary aspects and planning. So visionary aspects and planning. That means ability to see what you're going to do and to plan, to make time for it, and to honor what's making the steps, right? You plan out your garden. You don't just throw a bunch of seeds out there and be like, I hope something grows. And tempered judgment and decision making. Tempered judgment and decision making. That's when you're in balance. In balance. Okay, so here we are. We're going to do the sound and we're going to do the holds for the wood element. The sound is fun because it's the SH sound. And oftentimes when you're angry, that is a sound that comes very naturally to you anyway. So we're going to just say the first part of that natural sound. But I honestly think that this is where it came from, because this is the sound of that liver and gallbladder energy. We talked about the liver rejuvenating. The gallbladder, it's really interesting. Its role is to support the most difficult thing that the body does, which is digesting fats. And it just sits there hanging out, waiting until it's needed. And then it's like, hey, liver, I need some bile. Liver creates a bile, gives it to the gallbladder. Gallbladder squirts it where it needs to go. And then that's it. That's what gallbladder does. It gives you that little oomph you need to do the things that are difficult to do. My heart is racing 1,000 times a minute before I stand up at that city council meeting. I'm not just like, la, la, la. I am both terrified in the water element and I'm angry in the wood element. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to do it. And then here's the sound that you're going to make that's going to help you go from the anger into the assertive action. It's SH. And you're just going to take an inhale. Sometimes just doing that sound, often, not sometimes, often, you'll feel the emotion just kind of dissipate right then. That's the power of them. And you can do that sound percussively. You can do it slow and long. You can do it short and fast. Whatever is up for you that you need to expel. Shh, shh, shh. You can do it like that. You can go shh, 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 and play around with it. And what's beautiful about these sounds, they really activate and move things in the body. So if you're thinking like, well, I guess if you're tuning into our podcast, you're already past the point of thinking that this is just woo-woo stuff, and you're understanding the absolute intense reality of how this stuff works. But the more you start to play with these sounds, you will see how they work, and how you will find your own kind of musicality within that, your own song that you are singing of your emotions. So that's the sound. Shh. You can also do it like that, kind of that soothing, shh, like you do to a child that may be angry, right? Or destabilized. Shh. And I like to think about it. It's not so much the shh, be quiet, don't say anything. It's energetically shh. So I think of it as like, okay, we're back to water. A flume of like shh. The energy is shh, flowing by, so that it's transforming itself as it's flowing, as opposed to that shh when you were a little kid, when someone was telling you to be quiet. So if you did get that cue when you were a kid, and I still sometimes get it today, and I'm like, don't shush me. If somebody shushes me, like, that is the worst thing that somebody can do to me. Do not shush me. But when I do that shh myself, it's not a shushing, it's a flowing of the energy. So I hope if you've ever been shushed, that you can also make that transference yourself, so that it becomes a lovely tool that you can use instead of a tool of oppression. Okay, and now here's the handhold. You're going to put the heels of your hands on your temples, and then the fingers are going to drape over the forehead. So you know now that all of these holds, something is going to cover the forehead. This time, the heels of the hands are covering the temples, and the fingers are draped over the forehead. And again, you can just rest like this. You can lie in bed like this, and you can make the sound. So let's do 3 SHs together. In the nose. Just release, and you can shake your hands off if you like. And then just take a little notice internally how you are feeling right now. And that is the best gauge of understanding of how you can use these tools for yourself, is you check them out, and then you check in, and then you make the note, and you remember that note. And we'll go to the next spin of the wheel coming right up.
Yeah, next week we will do fire, which I'll say passionate. We're talking about the heart. It's a complex one. There's a lot going on in fire. So I look forward to that discussion, Lauren. Thank you for being your wood self and taking the lead on this. And everyone, we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Alrighty, energy fans, that's a wrap on another positively charged episode of Energy Works. Lauren, this is the part where we get to use our energy puns.
It's been electrifying, hasn't it, Blaine? We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have.
If you're feeling amped up and you want to keep your energy flowing, be sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform.
And we'd love to hear from you. So please take a moment to leave us a review. Your feedback helps us continue to deliver content that resonates. So light up our inbox.
And spark a conversation with your friends to tell them about us. And we'll see you next time on Energy Works.